The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floors. Representatives from 237 different species filled the vast space. Some floated in specialized atmosphere bubbles. Others required gravity fields to keep their massive forms from crushing the floor. A few existed as pure energy, their forms flickering like distant stars. Council Archon Veltar stood at the center podium. His blue skin shimmered under the hall's artificial suns. 6 arms moved in practiced gestures as he spoke to the assembled representatives. His voice carried clearly through the translation devices that made galactic communication possible. Fellow beings of the galaxy, Veltar began, we face a situation that requires immediate action. Over the past year, we have received troubling reports from multiple sectors. These reports concern a species that joined our community only recently. A low murmur filled the hall. Representatives turned to each other, speaking in hushed tones. The crystalline delegation chimed like wind bells. The gaseous nebula folk pulsed with curious colors. Even the ancient machine collective processed data faster, their mechanical forms clicking and whirring. Veltar raised one of his hands for silence. The species in question calls themselves humans. They come from a small blue world in the outer rim. Most of you know them as the bipedal mammals who recently developed faster-than-light travel. Representative Kixtal from the insectoid hive stood up. Her compound eyes reflected the hall's light like tiny mirrors. Archon Veltar, why do these humans concern us? Their technology is primitive. Their ships are slow. They have no special weapons or defenses. That is precisely the problem, Veltar replied. He gestured, and a holographic display appeared above the podium. 3 months ago, the mining colony on Kara 7 requested help with raiders. They hired 12 humans as security guards. The raiders numbered over 200, equipped with advanced plasma weapons and shielded vehicles. The hologram showed a desert planet with scattered mining facilities. Small figures moved across the landscape, but the detail was too poor to see clearly. The humans arrived with projectile weapons, metal bullets fired by chemical explosives, technology our ancestors abandoned thousands of years ago. The colony administrators expected little from such primitive equipment. Veltar paused, letting his words sink in. The human security team eliminated all 200 raiders in 6 hours. They used captured equipment, improvised traps, and tactics that violated every known principle of civilized warfare. The raiders surrendered after losing 3/4 of their force. Representative Thrum from the Heavy World Alliance rumbled in his deep voice. Perhaps the raiders were poorly trained. This proves nothing about human capabilities. There is more, Veltar continued. The hologram changed, showing a different star system. 5 weeks ago, the Elegant Twilight Corporation faced bankruptcy. Pirates had destroyed 17 of their cargo ships. The pirates used cloaked vessels and quantum torpedoes. The corporation hired 30 humans as convoy escorts. The new image showed sleek cargo ships moving between planets. Smaller craft darted around them like insects. The humans arrived in converted mining ships. No cloaking technology, no energy shields, no quantum weapons. They escorted 43 cargo runs without losing a single ship. The pirate fleet was completely destroyed. The pirates never managed to land a single hit on any convoy under human protection. Now the hall buzzed with real interest. Several representatives stood to get better views of the holographic display. The machine collective's clicking grew louder as they processed this information. Representative Silneth from the Peaceful Garden World spoke in her musical voice. How is this possible? Our military analysts have studied human capabilities. They showed no exceptional combat abilities during first contact. Veltar's expression grew grim. That brings us to the third incident, the one that prompted this emergency session. The hologram changed again, showing a massive space station orbiting a gas giant. The research station on Mobius Prime requested protection from separatist attacks. The separatists had successfully raided the station twice, stealing valuable data and equipment. Station security hired 8 humans as consultants. 8? Representative Kixtal's voice rose in pitch. 8 humans protected an entire research station? They did more than protect it, Veltar replied. The separatists attacked with their full force. 40 ships, including 2 battlecruisers. Advanced weapons, trained crews, superior numbers. The 8 humans convinced the station staff to implement what they called defensive measures. The hologram showed the space battle in detail. Ships moved in complex patterns around the station. Weapons fire streaked between vessels. But something was wrong with the scene. The attacking ship seemed confused. firing at empty space or at each other. The humans turned the station's research equipment into weapons. They used the main scanner array to scramble enemy targeting systems. They converted the gravity generators into mines. They even used the station's waste disposal system to launch projectiles at enemy ships. Veltar's 6 arms gestured more frantically as he continued. But the worst part was what they called psychological warfare. They broadcast messages to the attacking fleet. These messages contained information about the crew's families, their personal histories, their fears. Within 2 hours, half the Separatist fleet had surrendered. The rest fled the system. The hall fell silent. Even the constant background noise of translation devices seemed muted. Representatives stared at the holographic display, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Representative Zorketh from the military academy spoke carefully. Archon Veltar, how did these humans obtain personal information about enemy crews? Such data would require extensive intelligence networks. They obtained it during the battle, Veltar replied. They hacked enemy communication systems, cross-referenced public databases, and somehow gathered detailed psychological profiles in real time. All while coordinating the station's defense. The crystalline delegation chimed in alarm. The nebula folk pulsed angry red colors. Even the stoic machine collective seemed agitated, their mechanical forms shifting and reconfiguring. What concerns us most, Veltar continued, is not what these humans accomplished. It is how they accomplished it. They do not follow standard military doctrine. They do not respect established rules of engagement. They adapt and improvise faster than any species we have encountered. Representative Thrum stood again, his massive form casting shadows across nearby seats. Are you suggesting these humans pose a threat to galactic peace? I am suggesting, Veltar said slowly, that humans change the nature of conflict itself. Every military engagement they participate in becomes something new, something unpredictable, something that makes our established defense strategies obsolete. The Archon gestured, and the holographic display disappeared. Therefore, I propose Directive 7749. Under no circumstances should any member species recruit, hire, or otherwise involve humans in military conflicts. This directive applies to all forms of combat, from personal security to large-scale warfare. The debate that followed lasted 7 hours. Representatives argued about human rights, economic freedom, and cultural diversity. Some claimed the directive was discriminatory. Others worried about setting dangerous precedents. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. Every single representative voted in favor of Directive 7749. As the council session ended and representatives began filing out of the Great Hall, few truly understood what they had just witnessed. They saw the directive as a precaution, a way to maintain stability in an ordered galaxy. None of them realized they had just acknowledged something that would soon become undeniably clear. Humans did not wage war the way civilized species were supposed to. They waged it the way it was actually fought, and that made all the difference. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council issued Directive 7749. The great bureaucracy of galactic government had moved on to other matters. Trade disputes, territorial boundaries, and technological exchanges filled the daily agenda. Most representatives had already forgotten about the small blue world and its troublesome inhabitants. War Chief Garn of the Kethmoran Empire had never paid attention to council directives anyway. Standing 3 meters tall with 4 muscular arms and skin like polished stone, he commanded respect through strength alone. The Kethmorans had built their empire through conquest, claiming 12 star systems through superior warriors and unbreakable battle fury. Now that empire faced extinction. Garn stood in his command center, watching the tactical display with growing despair. Red symbols marked enemy positions throughout the Kethmoran home system. The Zephyrian Collective had arrived 3 weeks ago with a fleet that dwarfed anything the Kethmorans could field. War Chief called Sub-Commander Thek from his station. The enemy has broken through our outer defenses. Their main fleet will reach the homeworld in 48 hours. Garn's 4 hands clenched into fists. The Zephyrians fought with technology instead of honor. Their ships fired from impossible distances. Their weapons cut through Kethmoran armor like paper through air. Their shields turned the strongest Kethmoran attacks into harmless light shows. Have we received responses to our calls for aid? Garn asked. The crystalline hegemony expresses sympathy but claims neutrality. The peaceful garden worlds offer medical supplies after our defeat. The Machine Collective calculates our chances of victory at 0.03%. Garn turned away from the display. His people were warriors, not politicians. They had won their empire through strength and courage. But strength meant nothing against enemies who killed from 1,000 kilometers away. War Chief, Sub-Commander Thek said hesitantly, there might be one option. The Intelligence Division has a suggestion. Speak. They recommend hiring mercenaries. There are species willing to fight for payment. Garn snorted in disgust. We are Kethmoran. We do not hide behind hired weaklings. The Intelligence Division has identified one group that might be different. They come from a species called humans. The name sparked a vague memory in Garn's mind. He had heard something about humans recently, but council politics bored him. What makes these humans special? Thek consulted his datapad. Their military record is impressive. Small numbers, primitive equipment, but consistent victories. They are available for immediate deployment. How many can we hire? 50 soldiers. That is their entire available force in this sector. Garn almost laughed. 50 soldiers against the Zephyrian fleet? It was suicide. But the Kethmoran Empire was dying anyway. Perhaps these mercenaries could buy them time for a more honorable death. Hire them, Garn commanded. If we must fall, let it not be said we did not try everything. The humans arrived 2 days later in a converted cargo ship that looked ready for the scrapyard. Garn watched their shuttle land in the main hangar with growing disappointment. The ship had no weapons visible, no advanced armor, no energy shields. It looked like something his grandfather might have flown. The humans who emerged from the shuttle were even less impressive. They stood barely 2 meters tall with pale skin and weak-looking limbs. Their equipment consisted of metal projectile weapons and primitive body armor. No energy weapons, no force fields, no gravity manipulators. Their leader introduced herself as Major Sarah Chen. She had short black hair and calm brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. When she spoke, her voice carried an authority that surprised Garn. War Chief Garn, I presume? I'm Major Chen, commanding officer of the Human Military Advisory Unit. Advisory Unit, Garn rumbled. I hired soldiers, not advisors. We prefer to work with local forces rather than replace them, Chen replied. Our job is to help you win this war, not fight it for you. Garn led the humans to the strategic planning room. The tactical display showed the approaching Zephyrian fleet in all its terrible glory. Hundreds of ships moved in perfect formation toward the Kethmoran homeworld. As you can see, Garn explained, we face superior numbers and technology. The Zephyrians will establish orbital blockade, then bombard our cities until we surrender. Major Chen studied the display for several minutes. Her soldiers spread throughout the room, examining equipment and asking quiet questions. Garn noticed they touched everything, testing surfaces and checking connections. Tell me about Zephyrian battle doctrine, Chen said finally. They rely on long-range engagement. Their ships fire from extreme distance using guided energy weapons. They maintain formation discipline and never engage in close combat. What about their ground forces? Ground forces? Garn was confused. There will be no ground battle. They will bombard us from orbit. Chen smiled, and Garn felt a strange chill run down his spine. War Chief, has anyone ever tried to board Zephyrian ships? Board them? That is impossible. Their shields prevent any approach. Their shields stop energy weapons and large objects, Chen said. What about small, fast-moving projectiles? What about boarding pods disguised as debris? Garn stared at the human. You want to attack their ships directly? That is suicide. Maybe, Chen agreed. But it's also something they won't expect. When was the last time anyone tried close-quarters combat against the Zephyrians? Never. No one is that foolish. Chen's smile grew wider. Exactly. Over the next 36 hours, Major Chen and her soldiers transformed the Kethmoran defense plan. They studied Zephyrian ship designs, analyzed communication patterns, and identified weaknesses that Kethmoran military analysts had never considered. The Zephyrians coordinate everything through their command ship, Chen explained to Garn. Take out their communications, and the fleet becomes blind and deaf. Their command ship is the most heavily defended vessel in the fleet. Which is why they won't expect a direct assault, Chen replied. She pointed to the tactical display. We'll use your mining ships as delivery vehicles. Strip out the mining equipment. Add life support and basic engines. The Zephyrians will see them as industrial debris until it's too late. Garn felt his warrior spirit stirring for the first time in weeks. This plan is insane. War Chief, Chen said seriously, my people have a saying. If you find yourself in a fair fight, you didn't plan properly. When the Zephyrian fleet arrived at the Kathmaran homeworld, they found exactly what they expected. A defeated enemy hiding behind planetary shields waiting for the inevitable bombardment. The Zephyrian admiral ordered standard battle formation and began charging weapons for orbital strike. What they did not expect was a fleet of small, fast-moving objects launching from the planet's surface. The objects appeared to be mining debris, probably civilians trying to flee the system. The Zephyrian admiral ignored them. That was his first mistake. The mining ships carried 50 human soldiers and 200 Kathmaran volunteers. As they approached the Zephyrian fleet, Major Chen's voice crackled over the communication system. Remember, we're not here to destroy their ships. We're here to capture them. Every Zephyrian vessel we take makes us stronger and them weaker. The modified mining ships scattered throughout the enemy formation, moving too fast and too small for the Zephyrian weapons to target effectively. When they reached their assigned targets, the real battle began. Human soldiers and Kathmaran warriors cut through ship hulls using plasma torches and explosive charges. They fought their way through corridors designed for very different species. They adapted Zephyrian weapons in real time, turning captured equipment against its former owners. Most importantly, they did something the Zephyrians had never experienced before. They made the enemy afraid. The Zephyrian collective had conquered 17 worlds through technological superiority and overwhelming firepower. They had never faced an enemy that fought them face-to-face, crew-to-crew, using captured weapons and improvised tactics. Within 6 hours, the human-led boarding parties had captured 12 Zephyrian ships, including the command vessel. The rest of the fleet, suddenly cut off from central coordination, found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. War Chief Garn watched from the planet's surface as the tide of battle turned. The mighty Zephyrian fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just hours before, began to retreat. Their perfect formations broke apart as ship after ship fell under human-led assault. How? Garn whispered to himself. How did 50 humans defeat an entire fleet? Major Chen answered as if she had heard his question, though she stood 100 meters away. War Chief, my people learned long ago that the strongest enemy has one critical weakness. What weakness? Chen turned to face him, and Garn saw something in her eyes that he had never seen before. Something that made him glad humans were fighting beside him instead of against him. They believe their strength makes them invincible. Admiral Crickster of the Zephyrian Collective had commanded fleets for 300 standard years. He had conquered 17 worlds without losing a single major engagement. His tactical brilliance and technological superiority had made him a legend throughout the galaxy. Now he stared at his command display in complete bewilderment. Report, he commanded, his crystalline voice echoing through the ship's bridge. Admiral, we have lost contact with 12 vessels, including the primary communication relay, replied his tactical coordinator. The enemy appears to be using our own ships against us. Crickstar's 4 eyes focused on the display. Red symbols marked the positions of his captured ships. They moved through his formation like predators, targeting communication arrays and weapon systems with surgical precision. How many enemy vessels are we facing? Unknown, Admiral. Our sensors detect approximately 50 small craft, but they appear to be modified industrial ships. No significant weapon signatures. 50 ships destroyed 12 of our vessels? Crickster's voice rose in pitch. That is impossible. Admiral, interrupted Communications Officer Velran, we are receiving a transmission from the captured command ship. Display it. The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of Crickstar's former flagship. A small biped creature stood where Admiral Zethron should have been. The creature had pale skin and primitive-looking equipment, but its eyes held an intelligence that made Crickstar uncomfortable. Admiral Crickstar, the creature said in accented galactic standard, I am Major Sarah Chen of the Human Military Advisory Unit. I believe we need to talk. You dare address me, primitive? Return my ships immediately or face total destruction. Chen tilted her head slightly. Admiral, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not trying to destroy your fleet. We're trying to capture it. The statement was so absurd that Crickstar almost laughed. Capture my fleet? You command 50 obsolete mining ships against the most advanced military force in this sector. Actually, Chen replied, We now command 50 mining ships plus 12 of your vessels, and that number is about to increase. As if on cue, alerts began sounding throughout Krikstar's bridge. 3 more ships reported boarding actions. Enemy forces had somehow appeared inside their hulls without warning. How? Krikstar demanded. Our shields prevent any unauthorized approach. Your shields stop energy weapons and large objects, Chen explained patiently. They don't stop small pieces of debris containing human soldiers in vacuum suits. We've been floating past your defenses for the last hour. Krikstar watched in horror as his tactical display updated. Red symbols spread through his formation like a plague. Ship after ship fell silent as human-led boarding parties seized control. This is not how civilized warfare is conducted, Krikstar protested. You violate every established protocol. Chen's expression grew serious. Admiral, there's something you need to understand about humans. We don't fight civilized wars. We fight wars to win. All species fight to win. No, Chen replied. Most species fight to prove superiority, to demonstrate technological advancement, to maintain honor according to established rules. Humans fight to survive, and when we fight to survive, we use every advantage available. As Chen spoke, more alerts flooded Krikstar's bridge. The humans were not just capturing ships. They were turning captured Zephyrian technology against its creators. Energy weapons designed by Zephyrian engineers now fired on Zephyrian shields. Communication systems built by Zephyrian technicians now jammed Zephyrian frequencies. Admiral, reported his tactical coordinator, the enemy is adapting our technology faster than our countermeasures can respond. They appear to understand our systems better than we do. Krikstar studied the tactical display with growing despair. His perfectly coordinated fleet had become a chaotic mess. Ships fired on each other due to communication failures. Formation discipline collapsed as individual captains lost contact with central command. How are they learning our system so quickly? He demanded. Chen answered through the communication link as if she could hear his question. Admiral, human military doctrine includes something called adaptive warfare. We study enemy equipment while we're fighting them. Every captured system teaches us something new about your technology. On the display, Krikstar watched human soldiers working alongside Kethmaran warriors inside captured ships. They moved with purpose and coordination that seemed impossible given their different species and equipment. Your forces fight together as if they have trained for years, Krikstar observed. That's another human capability, Chen replied. We call it coalition warfare. Humans have a talent for working with other species, combining different strengths to achieve common goals. Krikstar realized with growing alarm that he was losing not just ships, but the entire strategic situation. The humans had turned his technological advantage into a liability. Every captured Zephyrian vessel made the enemy stronger, while making his own forces weaker. What do you want? Krikstar asked finally. We want you to leave Kethmaran space and never return, Chen replied. In exchange, we'll return your ships and crews unharmed. And if I refuse? Chen's expression remained calm, but Krikstar sensed something dangerous beneath her composed exterior. Admiral, humans have another saying. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. We've shown you what we can do with 50 soldiers and some mining ships. Do you really want to see what we can do if we stop being polite? As if to emphasize her point, the captured ships began moving into attack formation around Krikstar's remaining fleet. Zephyrian weapons powered up, targeting their former sister ships. This is unacceptable, Krikstar declared. The Zephyrian collective does not retreat. We will call for reinforcements. We will bombard the planet from orbit. No, you won't, Chen interrupted. Because we now control your orbital bombardment platforms. New alerts cascaded across Krikstar's display. The human boarding parties had reached the fleet's heavy weapon ships, the massive orbital strike platforms that were supposed to reduce Kethmaran cities to rubble, now aimed their weapons at the remaining Zephyrian fleet. You would use our own weapons against us? Krikstar asked in disbelief. Admiral, Chen replied. We would use anything that helps us win. That's what makes humans dangerous. We don't limit ourselves to appropriate weapons or honorable tactics. We use whatever works. Krikstar found himself facing a choice no Zephyrian admiral had ever confronted. His technologically superior fleet was being defeated by an enemy using his own weapons. His perfectly coordinated military machine had been turned against itself by soldiers who should not have posed any threat. Your terms? He asked through gritted teeth. Immediate withdrawal from Kethmaran space. Full retreat to your own territory. No return visits for at least 50 standard years. In exchange, we return your ships, your crews, and your dignity. And if we agree to these terms? Chen smiled, and Krikstar realized why the Galactic Council had issued warnings about human involvement in warfare. Then you get to go home and explain to your superiors how 50 humans convinced the entire Zephyrian fleet to leave voluntarily. The choice was simple, though it tasted like defeat in Krikstar's throat. We accept your terms. Excellent, Chen replied. Admiral, it has been a pleasure doing business with you. I hope we never meet again under similar circumstances. As the human-controlled ships began releasing their Zephyrian crews, Krikstar watched his tactical display with a mixture of relief and humiliation. The humans had done exactly what they promised. They had won the war without destroying his fleet. But as his ships prepared to retreat from Kethmoran space, Krikstar realized something that chilled him more than military defeat. The humans had not just beaten him. They had changed the fundamental nature of how warfare could be fought. And once that knowledge spread throughout the galaxy, nothing would ever be the same. His communications officer approached cautiously. Admiral, should we file a report about human capabilities? Krikstar considered the question for a long moment. The Galactic Council had issued Directive 7749 for a reason. Perhaps they had understood something that military commanders like himself had missed. File the report, he ordered, and recommend that all Zephyrian forces avoid any system containing human presence. All systems, Admiral? Krikstar looked at the tactical display one final time, watching the small symbols that represented 50 human soldiers. 50 soldiers who had defeated the most advanced fleet in known space, using captured weapons and improvised tactics. All systems, he confirmed, and recommend the same to our allies. As the Zephyrian fleet began its withdrawal, Admiral Krikstar realized that the galaxy's military balance had just shifted in ways no one could predict. The humans had introduced something new to galactic warfare, something that made traditional advantages meaningless. They had introduced the concept of actually winning. The news should never have spread. Military defeats were classified information, buried in secret reports and classified briefings. But the Kethmoran victory over the Zephyrian collective was too remarkable to hide. Too many witnesses, too many survivors, too many impossible details. Within 3 months, every intelligence agency in known space had acquired copies of the battle recordings. The footage spread through diplomatic channels, military academies, and underground information networks. Everyone wanted to understand how 50 primitive soldiers had defeated one of the galaxy's most advanced fleets. The first to act were the Ethereal Syndicate. Master economist, Calveth reviewed the intelligence reports in his floating meditation chamber. The Ethereals had evolved beyond physical form, existing as patterns of pure thought within crystalline matrices. Their rebellion against the corporate federation had lasted 7 decades, stalled by their inability to conduct effective military operations. The humans accomplished in hours what we have failed to achieve in 70 years, Calveth observed to his tactical advisors. They turned enemy strength into weakness. Master economist, replied Advisor Silneth. The corporate federation has superior resources and technology. Perhaps these humans could provide the strategic advantage we need. 3 days later, a coded message reached human space through carefully concealed channels. The Ethereal Syndicate requested military advisory services for their ongoing struggle against corporate oppression. Colonel James Morrison received the contract while stationed at the human military outpost on Kepler Station. A veteran of 12 different conflicts across human space, Morrison had built a reputation for unconventional thinking and successful outcomes in impossible situations. Ethereal Syndicate, Morrison mused, reading through the contract details. Never heard of them. What are we looking at, Sergeant? Sergeant Lisa Park consulted her datapad. Rebel organization fighting something called the Corporate Federation. They've been at war for 70 years without significant territorial gains. Federation has them outgunned and outmanned. 70 years. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Either these rebels are incredibly stubborn or incredibly incompetent. According to intelligence reports, the Ethereals exist as energy beings. They have trouble with physical combat and material warfare. Morrison smiled. Sounds like they need some material advisors. The human military advisory team arrived at the ethereal base hidden in an asteroid belt near the Centauri Reach 25. soldiers with standard equipment and no special technology. The Ethereals had expected something more impressive from the species that had defeated the Zephyrian collective. Master Economist, Calveth materialized his consciousness in a crystalline communication matrix to meet the humans personally. Colonel Morrison, we had hoped for a larger force. Master Economist, Morrison replied, we prefer to work smart rather than work big. Show us what you're fighting, and we'll show you how to win. The corporate federation controlled 17 star systems through economic manipulation and military enforcement. Their private security forces used advanced weapons and hired mercenaries to maintain order. They had fought the ethereal rebellion to a stalemate by containing rebel activities to isolated systems. The Federation maintains control through their trade stations, Calveth explained, projecting tactical displays into the meeting chamber. These stations process all commerce in each system. They are heavily defended and strategically positioned. Morrison studied the displays with professional interest. How do the Ethereals usually attack these stations? We attempt to overload their defensive systems using coordinated energy bombardment. And? The Federation's shields absorb our attacks. Their defensive platforms destroy our assault ships before we can inflict significant damage. Morrison nodded thoughtfully. Master Economist, has anyone ever tried attacking their economic infrastructure instead of their military defenses? Economic infrastructure? Trade routes, supply chains, communication networks. The stuff that makes money move from system to system. Calveth's crystalline form flickered with confusion. We seek to liberate oppressed systems, not destroy commerce. You don't destroy it, Morrison explained. You redirect it. Make Federation trade routes unprofitable. Force them to spend more defending their assets than they earn from exploitation. The plan Morrison developed was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of attacking fortified trade stations, the Ethereals would target undefended supply convoys. Instead of engaging Federation security forces directly, they would make Federation operations too expensive to continue. Economic warfare, Morrison called it. Make them choose between profit and control. Most corporations choose profit. The human-advised operations began small. Ethereal forces disabled cargo ships carrying luxury goods to Federation worlds. They caused accidents that delayed shipments and increased insurance costs. They broadcast economic analyses proving Federation exploitation to corporate shareholders. Within 6 months, Federation trade revenues dropped by 30%. Corporate executives found themselves explaining declining profits to increasingly angry investors. Military costs skyrocketed as security forces tried to protect every convoy and installation. Master Economist Calveth watched the tactical displays with amazement. The Federation is withdrawing from 3 systems. They claim the territories are no longer economically viable. Exactly, Morrison replied. War isn't just about destroying enemy forces. It's about making enemy objectives too expensive to pursue. But the humans were not content with one success. As news of the Ethereal Syndicate's victory spread, other species began requesting human military assistance. The crystalline hegemony had fought the Silicon Empire for over a century. Both sides used massive armies and fortress worlds in a stalemate that consumed entire star systems. When human advisors arrived, they ignored the massive fortifications and targeted the supply lines that kept the armies fed. The bioengineered swarm consciousness considered itself superior to all organic life. When they challenged human military advisors to prove organic worth, they discovered that humans could think faster and adapt quicker than supposedly perfect biological computers. Each conflict followed the same pattern. Human advisors arrived with minimal equipment and no apparent advantages. They studied the situation, identified weaknesses that local forces had never considered, and implemented solutions that changed the fundamental nature of the conflict. But the most disturbing engagement occurred when the Machine Collective requested human assistance. The collective had achieved perfect logical efficiency in all aspects of warfare. Their military calculations were flawless. Their strategic planning was optimal. Their tactical execution was precise. They had fought the Organic Alliance to a perfect stalemate for 200 years. Captain Elena Rodriguez arrived at the Machine Collective's central processing facility with a team of 15 soldiers. The collective's primary logic core greeted them with mechanical politeness. Human Captain Rodriguez, the Logic Corps stated, we require assistance in resolving the logical paradox presented by continued warfare with inferior organic forces. Primary Logic Corps, Rodriguez replied. What exactly do you mean by logical paradox? Our calculations indicate certain victory against organic alliance forces. However, victory has not been achieved despite optimal strategy implementation for 200 years. This suggests an error in our logical framework. Rodriguez studied the collective's tactical displays, perfect formations, optimal weapon placement, flawless coordination. Everything was exactly as military textbooks said it should be. Primary Logic Corps, Rodriguez said slowly. Has anyone ever told you that military textbooks are wrong? Clarification requested. Military theory represents optimal conflict resolution methodology. Only if your enemy follows the same textbooks, Rodriguez replied. What happens when your enemy doesn't play by the rules? The human solution was characteristically simple. Instead of fighting the organic alliance according to established military doctrine, the machine collective would fight dirty. Psychological warfare, misinformation campaigns, economic sabotage, and cultural manipulation. These methods violate optimal military efficiency, the Logic Corps protested. But do they win wars? Rodriguez asked. The machine collective's processors worked for several minutes before responding. Affirmative. These methods demonstrate superior probability of victory achievement. Then they're not inefficient, Rodriguez concluded. They're just different. Within 1 year, 7 major conflicts had ended with human involvement. The Galactic Council received reports of impossible victories, revolutionary tactics, and military doctrines that violated every established principle of civilized warfare. Council Archon Veltar read the classified summaries with growing alarm. The humans had not conquered anyone. They had not built an empire. They had simply changed how war was fought throughout known space, and that change was spreading. Military academies throughout the galaxy began teaching human-style tactics. Defense contractors started developing adaptive warfare technologies. Even peaceful species started hiring human consultants to understand these new military concepts. We have a problem, Veltar announced to his emergency council session. Entat. The human military influence is not contained to specific conflicts. It is becoming a galactic phenomenon. Reprise 1 year after the Keth Moran incident, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the second time in its 3,000-year history. The Great Hall that had once represented order and civilization now buzzed with tension and uncertainty. Council Archon Veltar stood at the central podium, his blue skin darker than usual with stress. Around him, representatives from hundreds of species waited for answers to questions they were afraid to ask. The comfortable predictability of galactic warfare had disappeared, replaced by something far more dangerous. Fellow beings, Veltar began, we face a crisis that threatens the foundation of our civilized galaxy. In the past year, 7 major conflicts have ended with human involvement. Each resolution has defied our understanding of military science. The holographic displays showed star maps marked with symbols representing completed conflicts. The ethereal syndicate had achieved independence after 70 years of struggle. The crystalline hegemony had defeated the Silicon Empire's century-old fortress lines. The machine collective had resolved their logical paradox through distinctly illogical methods. These victories, Veltar continued, share common characteristics that concern our military analysts. In each case, human advisors ignored established doctrine and implemented strategies that violated fundamental principles of civilized warfare. Representative Thrum from the Heavy World Alliance rumbled in his deep voice. Archon Veltar, surely successful military outcomes serve galactic peace. Why do human victories concern us? Because they change the nature of conflict itself, Veltar replied. Watch this recording from the Silicon Empire's final battle. The holographic display showed a massive fortress world surrounded by defensive platforms and minefields. Traditional military doctrine would require months of siege warfare to overcome such defenses. But the human-advised crystalline forces had done something different. Instead of attacking the fortress, Veltar explained, the humans convinced the crystalline forces to target the planet's waste management systems. Within 3 days, the fortress became uninhabitable due to sanitation failures. The Silicon Empire surrendered rather than continue fighting in those conditions. Disgusted sounds echoed through the hall. Several representatives demanded that the recording be stopped. The idea of using waste management as a weapon violated every concept of honorable warfare. This example illustrates our problem, Veltar continued. Humans do not recognize the distinction between legitimate military targets and civilian infrastructure. They do not respect the boundaries between acceptable and unacceptable tactics. Representative Silneth from the Peaceful Garden World spoke in her melodic voice. Perhaps we should invite human representatives to explain their military philosophy. Understanding their perspective might help us address these concerns. We have invited human representatives, Veltar replied. They arrived today. A murmur of surprise swept through the hall. Few representatives had expected direct human participation in council proceedings. The humans were still considered a minor species, barely worthy of galactic attention. The main entrance opened, and 3 figures entered the great hall. They looked remarkably ordinary compared to the exotic species filling the chamber. No advanced technology, no obvious enhancements, no dramatic physical modifications. Just 3 bipedal mammals in simple clothing. The lead figure introduced herself as General Patricia Hayes, Supreme Commander of Human Military Forces. She was an older woman with gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to catalog everything around her. Honored representatives, General Hayes began, we appreciate this opportunity to address your concerns about human military methods. General Hayes, Veltar said formally, the Galactic Council seeks to understand why human military advisors consistently violate established warfare protocols. Archon Veltar, Hayes replied. Perhaps the question should be why those protocols exist in the first place. The statement sent shockwaves through the assembly. No one questioned military protocols. They represented thousands of years of civilized development and conflict resolution. Our protocols, Representative Kickstal from the Insectoid Hive declared, ensure that warfare remains contained and predictable. They prevent unnecessary suffering and protect civilian populations. General Hayes nodded respectfully. Representative Kickstal, those are admirable goals. But what happens when following those protocols ensures you lose the war? Loss is preferable to barbarism, Representative Silneth stated firmly. Is it? Hayes asked. Tell that to the Ethereal Syndicate after 70 years of suffering under corporate Federation exploitation. Tell that to the Machine Collective after 2 centuries of logical stalemate that consumed entire star systems. Hayes gestured, and her aide activated a portable holographic projector. The display showed comparative casualty statistics from the 7 human-influenced conflicts. Every conflict, we advised, ended faster and with fewer total casualties than similar conflicts using traditional methods, Hayes explained. The crystalline silicon war killed approximately 1 million beings per year for a century. Our involvement ended the conflict in 6 months with total casualties under 10,000. Representative Thrum leaned forward with interest. How is this possible? Because we fight to end wars, not to demonstrate superiority, Hayes replied. Traditional galactic warfare is about proving technological advancement or cultural superiority. Human warfare is about achieving specific objectives as quickly and efficiently as possible. Veltar raised one of his 6 arms. General Hayes, your methods may be efficient, but they undermine the fundamental principles that maintain galactic order. Hayes studied the Council Archon for a moment. Archon Veltar, may I ask you a personal question? Proceed. How many wars were happening in galactic space before humans arrived? Veltar consulted his data display. Approximately 47 active conflicts involving 212 worlds. And how many of those conflicts had lasted longer than 50 standard years? Veltar's expression grew uncomfortable. 31 conflicts, some lasting centuries, Hayes observed. Wars that consumed generations of lives while following all the proper protocols and maintaining all the appropriate boundaries. The hall fell silent as representatives considered this information. The comfortable assumption that traditional warfare was more civilized began to crack under scrutiny. Our way may seem harsh, Hayes continued, but it works. Wars end, people stop dying. Societies can rebuild and move forward. At what cost? Demanded Representative Silneth. You abandon honor, ignore tradition, and treat warfare like a business transaction. Hayes's expression grew serious. Representative Silneth, I'm going to share something with you that might help explain human perspective. The portable projector displayed images of a blue-green world covered with cities and oceans. This is Earth, our homeworld. In our recorded history, humans fought over 15,000 wars against each other. Gasps echoed through the hall. The number was staggering. Most galactic species had experienced perhaps a dozen conflicts in their entire evolutionary history. 15,000 wars, Hayes repeated. We fought with stones, then metal, then chemicals, then nuclear weapons capable of destroying our entire planet. We learned warfare not as an abstract exercise but as a matter of species survival. The projector showed new images. Ancient battlefields, medieval sieges, modern military campaigns. The progression of human warfare across millennia. We learned that noble gestures get people killed, that following rules your enemy ignores leads to defeat. That war is not about proving superiority. It's about survival. But surely, Representative Kickstall protested, advanced civilizations should move beyond such primitive thinking. Should they? Hayes asked. Let me tell you about the most important lesson humanity learned from our violent history. The projector displayed a final image. A document written in ancient human script, surrounded by symbols of peace and cooperation. After developing weapons that could destroy our world, humans created something called the United Nations. We learned to resolve conflicts through diplomacy, negotiation, and mutual cooperation. We stopped fighting wars against each other. Hayes turned to face the assembled representatives, but we never forgot how to fight them. And when we encountered species that threatened innocent lives, we remembered those lessons. Veltar studied the human general with new understanding. You are saying that humans use violence to preserve peace. We use effective methods to achieve necessary objectives, Hayes corrected. Sometimes that means fighting dirty. Sometimes it means breaking established rules. But it always means ending conflicts as quickly as possible with minimal total casualties. This philosophy terrifies other species, Veltar observed. Hayes nodded. I understand that fear. But consider the alternative. Before human involvement, galactic warfare was predictable, orderly, and almost eternal. Conflicts lasted for centuries because no one wanted to fight hard enough to win decisively. And now wars end, Hayes said simply. That may be frightening for military planners who built careers around managing eternal conflicts, but it's good news for the billions of beings who just want to live in peace. The debate that followed